Catherine, and I run Steampunk Coffee here in North Berwick. We have a roastery and shop here at 49A Kirkports in North Berwick, just behind the High Street. I was actually born in Malawi in East Africa, but I lived most of my childhood in the United States, Washington, D.C. I came to Scotland many years ago to go to university and just ended up kind of staying here. My work before getting into hospitality was nothing to do with business or anything. I always kind of worked in advocacy work, so my education and interest was in immigration and refugee stuff. So I worked as an advocate for asylum seekers for a while and worked on preparing people's cases. I had an interest, I think, always in justice issues, whether that's economic, social, racial, all the different kind of issues. I guess I brought that to this business, so a food hospitality kind of business. The Steampunk started in 2012. I have this old camper van, which is a 1976 Volkswagen Westfalia that I was using just like family holidays, and it was in fact my only vehicle for a while when I lived in town in Edinburgh. I started going around markets, festivals, and so on, and selling cakes and making espresso out of the van. In 2014, we moved into this building. I'd run businesses in this town for a while. Like, I'd started a baking business from home many years previously, and so I knew a lot of people, and we had a lot of local support. So we were really busy from day one here as a cafe, which was great.
My name is Michael Lewis, and I'm an educator and a maker. I discovered steampunk when it started back at the Den. So I was walking around with my wife one day, and we kind of peeked our heads through the window of this place. We're like, like something cool is happening in here. And we've been around North Berwick for a while, and it was by far the most interesting thing that we kind of seen happening. So we were kind of immediately drawn in, and we popped our heads in, and Kath was there, and they were just kind of setting everything up. And so we got to go in for like a very early test run. Early on in the kind of COVID period, Kath and I were having a conversation around how you kind of think about reintroducing people into an environment, and how you might provide some kind of physical signs around how people should use space, something which is kind of gentle but a little bit celebratory, just because the time was all a bit gnarly. And so I made this wall which would operate on the terrace space as a way to kind of separate between ingoing and outgoing traffic, and also ways to kind of demarcate space so that we kind of reinforce this idea of social distancing. So the map on the front is a kind of geologic mapping of the rock of the North Berwick coastline. So it's sort of this reflection upon kind of time. We were all kind of being asked to really slow down in a lot of ways. And so it became an opportunity to add a little bit of pop of color into the space, so a little bit celebratory, and also a way just to kind of reflect on how it is that we need to act responsibly in civic space.
When the COVID outbreak happened here in the UK, we all closed. So that was the first challenge. In the days leading up to that, of course, there was a really difficult time where we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know how serious the situation would be here. And we didn't know what sort of support there would be from the government at that stage. We decided to close based on how difficult it was to operate safely.
I'm Jen. I run the kitchen at Steampunk, and I've been here about a year and a half. Well, particularly for me in the kitchen, one worry was that we had loads of stock. Once COVID hit, we had kind of no idea that it was going to happen, that we were all going to be furloughed for so long. So one really good thing was the way that we were able to donate so much of the stock was brilliant, so that obviously there was really low waste. And also, based in North Berwick, there's a low waste group online. So Kath was able to get loads of those guys to come in and take, they could come in and take herbs and spices and stuff that would be totally fine, but we couldn't use them in the kitchen anymore because they'd be out of date.
So we as a tiny business, we spend more on our packaging than if we didn't care and we just bought something cheap and plastic and whatever. And that comes out of our profits. Another reason we're not going to be next Starbucks. But that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we've got a great team, we're making a living, we're happy, we support each other. I'm really big fan of Donut Economics. It's a book I read many years ago, and I love that idea of growing, but within the limit of what the resources of the planet allow. So for me personally, living in a small town in Scotland, I would like to see the business do things that make our community better.
I think that sustainability is obviously an incredibly pertinent issue, and particularly in light of the recent pandemic, it's become something that's become probably more pertinent and more relevant in people's lives. It's made people address their consumption a lot more, think about purchasing things more locally, and look at their kind of global and carbon footprints. I think we've obviously recently become parents, so we're kind of thinking about sustainability in regards to our daughter's future, and I feel like everybody really has a duty of care to do what they can on a domestic level, at least, to kind of contribute to making a bit of a change. I mean, if we work collectively, I think there can be a real shift, and action really has to be taken immediately to address that. And within my own work, I'm a designer, and I certainly look at where I'm sourcing materials, where I'm producing things. Within our home, we kind of try and recycle as much as possible and really leave as little imprint from what we buy and consume as possible. And I really feel like if everybody could do that, there'd be a bit of a seismic shift, which is very timely.
I think it's clear to everyone who's paying attention that we have some serious issues that we need to deal with in terms of environmental responsibility. And it's one of the areas where I feel like Steampunk is such a business leader, and being a nimble, independent business, they're able to always stay kind of at the forefront of where ethically we need to be, I think. And so for me as an individual, it aligns so much with what my values are in terms of the shared responsibility that we have, and setting an example in terms of responsible usage of plastic, in terms of sourcing, in terms of treating staff with, respect, basic human respect. And so I think it's this partnership which just follows on from the community aspects of what Steampunk is, that the community is something which is local, and it's something that we're involved in as people, but it's also global, and it's something which we have a responsibility to treat this planet in a way so that it can sustain. So I feel like for me as a customer, this is why I love Steampunk so much, because it gets this balance right between what is social and what is kind of ecological, I suppose you could say.
I've also been quite keen in championing the idea of cooperation over competition. I really hate the idea that businesses need to be constantly seeking growth and be competitive with each other. And so I've worked together with some other businesses on some interesting different collaborations over the years.
No one's been left unfrustrated. A wave through a window, a hug for a later date, our lives stuck in limbo, we patiently wait. But now there is time to strive for good cause, with a life no longer held on pause. Change. So we're building an ecosystem of conscious buyers, from farmers to grocers and chefs to suppliers. Join the movement, be part of the mission, and tell us who you think deserves recognition.
Sometimes, when I think about all the things that need to be fixed, a sense of paralysis sets in, and it's just really difficult to figure out how on earth we're going to fix these things. And I also get really angry sometimes about, oh, well, you know, what does it matter? Like, if I don't use a plastic bottle for this water, when this oil company is like setting the ocean literally on fire right now. You know, like what role do we have as individuals? I think change is not going to come about by big corporations deciding to do things that are economically disadvantageous to them. That's just not going to happen because they are led by the needs of shareholders. So they are not making ethical choices, and they can't make ethical choices because business isn't set up that way. So I think as a business, we can show that businesses don't have to be run that way and they can be sustainable. We are never going to be a multi-million pound business. We're never going to have a chain of shops. I think coffee shops have a proud history of like social change. They've been places where people meet and ideas can be discussed. And I think that it's important to realize that yes, our tiny little changes are not directly going to fix anything, but we as people need to come together and we need to force change, like at a national legislative level. I think until it becomes economically disadvantageous for companies to be polluting, to be using plastic, they're just going to continue to do that. If you want to get in touch with us, you can keep in touch online on Instagram. We are super active on that. We respond to DMs. You can follow us on our stories, and we also share posts about what we're doing. So you can reach us there on @SteampunkCoffee. And we are also online. Our website is www.steampunkcoffee.co.uk. And there on the website, you can find out what's happening here, but you can also order coffee and equipment online. You can find out about courses that we're offering. And we are open for takeaway at the moment in North Berwick at 49A Kirk Ports, which is the road behind the high street. And we have lovely seating on our terrace. We're open 9 to 5 every day. We will hopefully at some point later this year be reopening for some seating inside. But we'll keep people posted on our Instagram about when that's happening.